There is a truth about human perception that feels almost uncomfortable to admit. We see one positive quality in someone, and we unconsciously let that single trait define how we view their entire character. When we meet a person who appears kind, attractive, intelligent, or talented, we start assuming they must also be honest, moral, and trustworthy. This is not deliberate. It happens quietly in the background of the mind, shaping how we treat others and how we allow them to treat us. Psychologists call this the halo effect, and it is one of the most pervasive forms of dark psychology influencing human relationships and decisions. Imagine a leader praised for eloquence and charm, admired for how confidently they stand in front of crowds. People hear their voice and feel convinced that every word carries wisdom. Over time, their charm blinds followers to their flaws, their wrongdoings, even their manipulation. The same pattern repeats with celebrities, teachers, politicians, and even personal acquaintances. A single admirable quality casts a glow over everything else, hiding mistakes and darker truths behind a curtain of perceived perfection. This bias does not only work with admiration, it can operate in the reverse, when one negative quality makes us assume that someone is entirely flawed. A person who dresses poorly might be unfairly judged as lazy or unintelligent, even if they possess deep insight or strong moral values. The halo effect is not about seeing people as they truly are. It is about seeing them through the distorted lens of a single, exaggerated impression. The origins of this bias lie deep in human survival instincts. Early humans needed rapid judgments to decide whether someone was safe or dangerous. A quick impression could mean life or death. Over thousands of years, the brain learned to take mental shortcuts, trusting one visible sign to determine character. But in modern life, this shortcut misfires. We are no longer avoiding predators. We are navigating workplaces, friendships, media, and relationships where appearances can deceive us. This creates unsettling questions. How many people have you trusted simply because they smiled at the right time or spoke with confidence? How often have we excused harmful behavior because it came from someone admired? And perhaps most unsettling of all, how often has this bias blinded us to danger, allowing harm to spread unnoticed until it is too late? The halo effect does not operate in isolation. It connects to other forces in dark psychology. It fuels propaganda by allowing a charismatic figure to mask lies with charm. It strengthens manipulation in abusive relationships, where one positive memory is used to overshadow patterns of harm. It hides corruption in powerful institutions, where a single public act of charity creates an illusion of virtue. The more we admire, the less we question, and the more control we surrender without realizing it. When we explore this bias closely, it reveals something profound about human nature. We long for simple narratives, for the comfort of believing that good people are purely good and bad people are purely bad. This desire for simplicity makes life feel stable, yet it prevents us from seeing reality as it is. Real human character is complex, contradictory, and full of shades we often ignore. By reducing someone to a single trait, we fail to understand them fully, and we risk being misled by what is left unseen. The mask of perfection is not rare, it is everywhere. It appears in the charming co-worker who hides ambition behind friendliness, in the celebrity whose personal life contradicts their public image, in the leader whose public virtue hides private vice. Once this pattern is noticed, it cannot be unseen. You begin to wonder how many of your own judgments have been shaped by this silent force, and what truths have remained hidden in plain sight because of it. For as long as we can remember, society has taught us to equate good qualities with good people. When someone is physically attractive, we assume kindness. When someone is wealthy, we assume competence. When someone speaks confidently, we assume wisdom. This is the silent lie that guides so many of our daily interactions. We rarely question it, because the pattern feels safe and comfortable. We want to believe that the world is predictable, that the person who smiles warmly must also have pure intentions. This is the root of the halo effect. and it is also one of the most underestimated elements of dark psychology. Think about the last time you admired someone instantly. Perhaps it was a new colleague, a teacher, or even a stranger you met briefly. Without much evidence, you felt they were capable, trustworthy, maybe even admirable beyond reason. That feeling was not proof of who they were. It was proof of how your mind was working. The halo effect does not evaluate reality, it creates it. Your brain takes a single positive attribute and spreads it across every unknown part of the person's character, filling gaps with assumptions rather than facts. The danger lies in how invisible this process is. You rarely notice it happening. A friendly tone in conversation makes you believe the person must also be honest. A well-dressed figure convinces you they must also be intelligent. When we encounter people who appear moral, competent, or attractive, we unconsciously let down our guard. This is not about kindness or optimism. It is about the human need for mental shortcuts. Our minds are constantly searching for patterns to make life simpler and safer, but simplicity comes with a cost. This bias has consequences that ripple far beyond individual perception. It shapes legal decisions, where jurors are more lenient toward attractive defendants. It influences hiring, where interviewers unconsciously favor well-spoken candidates over equally skilled but quieter individuals. It distorts education, where teachers may unconsciously grade more favorably towards students who seem confident or charming. In each case, the decision maker believes they are being objective, yet they are trapped in a psychological illusion. Philosophers have long warned about the danger of judging based on appearances. Ancient thinkers debated whether virtue could ever be seen from the outside, or if true morality was hidden deep within the soul. Modern psychology now confirms what philosophy suspected centuries ago. What we see is rarely the full truth. Human beings are layered, and first impressions are often nothing more than surface reflections of deeper, unseen realities. The lie persists because it offers comfort. It is easier to believe in pure goodness than to wrestle with complexity. A world where good traits predict good character feels safe and orderly, but reality is not safe or orderly. People are capable of holding kindness and cruelty within the same mind. They can present admirable qualities to some, while harming others behind closed doors. The halo effect masks this contradiction, and dark psychology thrives in that blind spot. If you look back at your life, you might notice moments when admiration clouded judgment. Perhaps you excused someone's behavior because they were talented, beautiful, or respected by others. Perhaps you ignored warning signs because you trusted the glow of a first impression. The painful truth is that this happens to all of us, and the more confident we feel in our judgment, the more vulnerable we become to this bias. The halo effect is not simply a quirk of perception. It is a force that can be exploited. Advertisers use it to sell products. Politicians use it to win elections. Manipulators use it to gain control. And until we recognize how it works, we remain open to being deceived by the very people we admire most. The idea of the halo effect was not something people immediately understood in the past. It was uncovered through detailed psychological research and careful observation of human behavior. One of the earliest and most important studies came from the psychologist Edward Thorndike in the early 20th century. His work began with a simple task that revealed something profound about how people judge each other, something that would later become an essential concept in understanding dark psychology. Thorndike studied military officers and asked them to evaluate their soldiers on several unrelated traits, such as intelligence, leadership, loyalty, and physical appearance. What he discovered was surprising. Instead of rating each quality separately, the officers allowed their overall impression of the soldier to influence every rating. If a soldier appeared disciplined and neat, the officers tended to assume that the soldier was also more intelligent and more trustworthy. If a soldier seemed awkward or unpolished, they often assumed the soldier lacked honesty or competence, even without evidence to support those judgments. This single observation uncovered a major weakness in human perception. People do not always separate individual traits. Instead, one positive or negative characteristic can create a kind of glow around the entire person, shaping every other belief about them. Thorndike described this phenomenon as a halo because it acts like a light that softens or exaggerates everything we see about someone. The implications of this discovery went far beyond the military. It suggested that this same bias occurs in every part of society. Teachers may unconsciously give higher grades to students they find more likable. Employers might favor a confident candidate during interviews, even if that person is less skilled than others. Jurors might treat an attractive defendant with more sympathy than an ordinary-looking one, regardless of the evidence presented. The halo effect was no longer just an interesting finding from one experiment. It was a universal tendency that influences daily life for every human being. This realization forced psychologists to confront a difficult truth. Human judgment is not always rational. People believe they are objective, yet they are constantly influenced by factors that have little to do with reality. It raised unsettling questions about fairness, morality, and the way we decide who deserves trust or admiration. In a world that rewards appearances and first impressions, how can we be sure we are actually seeing someone for who they truly are? Before exploring how later researchers expanded on Thorndike's work, it is important to understand why this bias exists at all. The halo effect originally served a purpose in human survival. In early human societies, people needed to make quick judgments to avoid danger and choose allies. A visible sign of strength, health, or confidence could mean safety in uncertain conditions. Over thousands of years, the brain evolved to rely on these shortcuts, which worked well in primitive environments. However, in the complexity of modern life, this same instinct often misleads us, leaving us vulnerable to manipulation and blind admiration. After Edward Thorndike's initial discovery, other psychologists began exploring whether the halo effect was unique to military settings or if it influenced every area of human life. What they found over the next several decades confirmed that this bias is nearly universal. It appears in schools, workplaces, courts, and even personal relationships. The same mental shortcut that once helped humans make quick survival judgments now quietly directs how we perceive almost everyone we meet. In the decades following Thorndike's work, numerous studies replicated the same pattern. Teachers were found to grade students more generously if the student appeared confident or attractive, even when their work quality was identical to others. Employers consistently favored candidates who displayed a single positive trait during interviews, such as good grooming or a pleasant voice, even if the candidate lacked other necessary skills. Researchers also discovered that jurors in legal trials were unconsciously more lenient toward defendants they found visually appealing. The effect was not limited to positive traits. It worked in reverse as well. A single negative impression, like awkward body language, could make people believe someone was dishonest or unintelligent. These findings were unsettling because they revealed how fragile objectivity really is. People like to believe they evaluate others based on facts, but perception is rarely that simple. The halo effect shows that our minds are wired to seek harmony. If we notice one admirable quality, we subconsciously assume there must be others. If we see one flaw, we often imagine more flaws that do not exist. This mental habit simplifies decision-making, but it also creates deep blind spots. The research eventually moved beyond individual interactions and began influencing fields like marketing, advertising, and political strategy. Businesses realized that if a product could appear high quality in one area, such as packaging or endorsements, consumers would often assume the entire product was superior. Politicians learned that a confident smile or well-chosen words could inspire trust, even when their policies were vague or flawed. This is where dark psychology entered the picture. It became clear that this bias could be used deliberately to influence behavior, making people believe things that were not necessarily true. Philosophically, this raised troubling questions about morality and human nature. If our perceptions are so easily shaped by appearances, can we ever claim to see others as they truly are? Are we destined to live in a world where charm, beauty, or confidence overshadow reality? These questions do not have easy answers, but they underscore why the halo effect remains one of the most studied and most concerning cognitive biases in modern psychology. Human beings have an extraordinary ability to form impressions within seconds of meeting someone. In many ways, this skill has been essential to survival. Our ancestors lived in unpredictable environments, where deciding quickly whether someone was friend or foe could mean the difference between life and death. The brain evolved to scan for visible signals, such as facial expressions, posture, and tone of voice, to make rapid judgments. This instinct remains deeply embedded in us today, but modern society rarely demands the kind of life or death decisions that originally shaped this habit. Instead, it now creates a subtle trap. We place enormous trust in first impressions, even when there is no evidence to justify them. The halo effect thrives in this psychological shortcut. The moment we see one admirable quality, whether it is kindness, beauty, intelligence, or charm, our minds start filling in the blanks about everything else. We assume moral strength where none may exist. We believe competence where there might be incompetence. We imagine honesty in someone who may simply be skilled at appearing sincere. This bias operates so quickly and so quietly that we rarely stop to question it. Consider the speed of human judgment. Research shows that people form opinions about trustworthiness in as little as 1/10 of a second when viewing a face. That initial judgment becomes incredibly hard to overturn. Once we place someone in a category of trustworthy or untrustworthy, our brains begin collecting evidence that supports our first impression and dismissing evidence that contradicts it. This is known as confirmation bias, and when combined with the halo effect, it creates an almost unbreakable illusion. In everyday life, this means that first impressions carry far more weight than they should. A confident handshake at a job interview can overshadow a candidate's lack of experience. A warm smile on a first date can hide incompatible values or even harmful behavior. A politician's well-delivered speech can mask weak policies or corrupt intentions. These examples are not rare. They happen constantly because human beings are wired to believe that what they see first is closest to the truth. The danger is compounded by the way memory works. Once we form an initial impression, every subsequent interaction is filtered through that lens. If we meet someone and find them impressive, we interpret later behavior in a way that supports our original belief. When they make a mistake, we excuse it as an anomaly. When they succeed, we see it as proof of their overall goodness. This psychological process creates a self-reinforcing cycle where the initial impression grows stronger over time, regardless of accuracy. This pattern explains why the halo effect is so difficult to resist. It is not just about the first impression, it is about the way our brains defend that impression against anything that challenges it. Humans seek cognitive harmony. We want our beliefs about people to remain consistent, because inconsistency creates discomfort. As a result, we unconsciously avoid evidence that would force us to rethink someone we admire or distrust. The consequences of trusting first impressions extend into almost every corner of life. In workplaces, managers often favor employees who make a strong early impact, even if their performance later does not justify continued praise. An employee who impresses in the first month might continue receiving opportunities long after others have surpassed them in skill or reliability. This creates an uneven environment where talent is overlooked, and decisions are based more on initial feelings than on long-term evidence. In relationships, the same dynamic is even more personal. When you meet someone who instantly seems kind, charming, or attractive, the halo they project influences how you interpret every action afterward. If they cancel plans, you may excuse it as a rare moment of busyness, rather than in consideration. If they speak harshly in an argument, you might convince yourself they are under stress, rather than facing the possibility that they are revealing their true character. The halo effect quietly shapes these judgments, allowing you to cling to the first impression even as reality offers warning signs. Society as a whole is deeply vulnerable to this bias. Public figures often rise to influence not because of moral character or competence, but because of how they present themselves in their earliest appearances. A single inspiring speech or viral moment can define how the public views them for years. Celebrities and politicians are skilled at exploiting this, knowing that first impressions can be engineered through appearance, tone, and selective storytelling. What follows is a kind of collective blindness, where the admiration of a crowd shields individuals from scrutiny and accountability. Psychologists have also linked this bias to the way media portrays people. News outlets, advertising campaigns, and entertainment industries all understand that first impressions can shape public opinion faster than facts can correct it. A well-produced image, a confident soundbite, or a single heroic act can rewrite the narrative of a person's character. Once the narrative is established, the truth often struggles to compete. This is why false admiration can persist even after scandals or revelations about harmful behavior. Breaking this cycle requires deliberate awareness. First impressions are not inherently wrong, but they are incomplete. To see people more accurately, we must learn to slow down and examine behavior over time, rather than relying on initial feelings. This means questioning our own comfort with simplicity and confronting the discomfort of complexity. True character is not revealed in moments of performance. It is revealed in patterns that emerge when no one is watching. The most unsettling part is that this bias does not only affect how we view others, it also affects how others view us. The way we present ourselves in brief encounters can overshadow deeper qualities we may never get the chance to show. For better or worse, our lives are constantly influenced by the silent power of the halo effect, guiding decisions that feel rational but are rooted in instinct. The modern world is a perfect environment for the halo effect to thrive. Centuries ago, impressions were formed mostly within small communities where people had time to know each other. Today, impressions are shaped in seconds through screens, headlines, and curated images. We encounter individuals through social media profiles, interviews, advertisements, and carefully staged public appearances. This environment magnifies the power of dark psychology, where perception can be engineered to hide flaws and amplify selective virtues. Consider how celebrities are presented. A single role in a film, a carefully crafted music video, or an emotional speech can create a perception of moral excellence or personal depth. Viewers, moved by the moment, begin assuming that the actor or musician must also be wise, compassionate, and admirable in every aspect of life. When controversies arise, people struggle to reconcile the reality with the halo they have built in their minds. This explains why fan communities often defend public figures even in the face of undeniable evidence of wrongdoing. The same pattern is visible in politics. A charismatic leader who speaks with confidence and optimism can build loyalty far faster than a leader with stronger policies but weaker presentation. Campaigns know this and use it deliberately. They emphasize appearances, body language, and relatable moments because they understand that people rarely separate performance from substance. The first impression lingers, shaping public opinion long after the facts are revealed. Media companies exploit this bias constantly. Advertisers use attractive models or respected figures to endorse products, knowing that admiration for the spokesperson will transfer to the brand itself. A sleek design or high-quality commercial can make a product seem superior even before anyone tests it. Social media influencers rely on this same principle, building trust and selling products, not necessarily because of proven quality, but because followers feel connected to the curated image they present. The halo effect also shapes how society views entire institutions. A single act of charity by a corporation can overshadow harmful practices behind the scenes. A well-publicized community initiative can mask systemic issues that rarely make headlines. This selective storytelling is a powerful tool, allowing organizations to maintain public trust without addressing deeper problems. What makes this especially dangerous is how unconscious it is. People rarely realize they are falling into this trap. They believe their admiration is rational, built on careful judgment, when in reality, it often stems from a carefully constructed first impression. This bias spreads quickly in the digital age, where viral moments can define reputations overnight and where misinformation can spread before truth has time to catch up. In the current age of instant communication, the halo effect does not only elevate reputations, but also creates dramatic downfalls. The same public that praises someone for a single admirable act can later condemn them with equal intensity when flaws are revealed. This swing between admiration and outrage fuels what is often called cancel culture. Yet even in these reversals, the halo effect is at work. Once a negative impression forms, people begin interpreting every action through that lens, often exaggerating flaws or assuming the worst without question. Online reputations are particularly vulnerable to this phenomenon. A viral video or trending post can define how millions view a person they have never met. A single moment of kindness can spark widespread admiration, while one misstep can lead to collective condemnation. Neither reaction necessarily reflects the full truth. Instead, both are shaped by a bias that takes one visible trait and magnifies it across an entire personality. This is why some public figures rise or fall overnight, their fates determined less by reality and more by the psychology of perception. Social media intensifies the problem by encouraging curated identities. Influencers and brands present polished versions of themselves, highlighting selective virtues while hiding imperfections. Viewers, exposed only to this curated image, fill in the gaps with assumptions. They imagine honesty, competence, and goodness where there may be none. The admiration becomes personal. Followers feel connected to someone they do not truly know. This emotional attachment is powerful, and it explains why manipulative figures can maintain loyal audiences even when exposed for unethical behavior. The halo effect is also visible in public movements and causes. A charismatic spokesperson can elevate an entire movement, but their personal image often overshadows the complexity of the issues they represent. Support or opposition to the cause can become entangled with feelings toward the figurehead rather than the facts themselves. This dynamic can lead to oversimplification, where nuanced debates collapse into personality-driven conflicts. Corporations and political entities understand this vulnerability and invest heavily in shaping public perception. They rely on symbolism, selective storytelling, and emotionally charged imagery to create an impression of virtue. A company may launch a well-publicized sustainability initiative while quietly continuing harmful practices elsewhere, because the halo effect leads people to generalize from one positive trait. The broader reality often goes unquestioned. This creates a profound challenge for modern society. In a world flooded with information, people still rely on shortcuts to navigate complexity. We trust first impressions, viral images, and emotional narratives, because analyzing every detail would be overwhelming. Yet this shortcut leaves us open to manipulation. The dark psychology behind this bias thrives in the digital age, where controlling perception is often more powerful than controlling truth. The halo effect becomes especially dangerous when it is used deliberately as a tool for manipulation. While this bias originally evolved as a natural shortcut for human judgment, individuals who understand its power can weaponize it to gain influence, control, and even devotion. This is where the concept crosses into dark psychology, the study of how psychological principles can be used to exploit rather than to help. Manipulators often begin by identifying which single trait will create the strongest positive impression. It could be charm, physical attractiveness, intelligence, or even displays of vulnerability. Once they establish this first impression, they allow the bias to do the rest of the work. The target begins filling in the blanks, assuming other positive qualities that were never demonstrated. The manipulator no longer needs to prove honesty or loyalty. Admiration for one visible strength creates trust in every unseen area. Cults offer some of the clearest examples of this dynamic. Many cult leaders possess a magnetic presence or the ability to deliver inspiring speeches. Followers, moved by this one admirable quality, often assume that the leader must also be morally good and spiritually enlightened. This misplaced admiration creates a shield against doubt. Even when the leader's actions become harmful or exploitative, the initial halo prevents followers from seeing the danger clearly. The longer this dynamic continues, the more resistant people become to questioning their own beliefs, because doing so would mean admitting they were deceived. The same principle operates in abusive relationships. An abuser may display charm or affection in the early stages, creating a powerful first impression. This positive memory lingers, forming a halo that overshadows later harmful behavior. Victims often rationalize abuse by recalling the initial kindness or by believing the good moments reflect the abuser's true self. This psychological trap can keep people in harmful situations far longer than logic would suggest. Con artists also rely heavily on the halo effect. They present themselves as confident professionals, successful entrepreneurs, or trustworthy neighbors. Once this perception is set, victims are far less likely to question suspicious behavior or missing details. By the time the truth emerges, the manipulator has often disappeared, leaving behind financial or emotional devastation. The subtlety of manipulation through the halo effect lies in how invisible it feels while it happens. People rarely realize they are being guided towards certain beliefs. Psychologists have demonstrated this in controlled experiments, where participants unknowingly judged others more favorably or harshly based on irrelevant attributes. For example, one classic study showed that people rated the same essay differently, depending on whether they were first shown an image of the writer as attractive or unattractive. The content of the essay never changed, but the perception of quality shifted entirely because of the mental glow surrounding the individual. This finding extends beyond physical appearance. Another experiment revealed that people perceived someone as more intelligent and competent simply because they spoke with confidence, even when the information was incorrect. The authoritative tone caused listeners to believe it was accurate. This demonstrates how manipulators in positions of power can influence audiences, not by presenting facts, but by projecting the right demeanor. The halo effect ensures that a single positive signal, like confidence, radiates across all judgments, making everything that follows seem credible. Dark psychology thrives on this phenomenon because it allows for control without overt force. Politicians can craft an image of warmth or decisiveness and let public admiration carry them past scrutiny. Influencers and marketers can exploit admiration to sell products unrelated to the quality of their content. Even within families, certain individuals may hide harmful patterns behind carefully chosen acts of generosity or charm. The mind accepts these surface traits as proof of deeper goodness, leaving blind spots where danger can grow unnoticed. Awareness alone does not eliminate the risk. Knowing about the halo effect is helpful, but the bias operates automatically and at high speed. Even trained professionals in psychology are susceptible to it. This is because the halo effect is not purely intellectual, it is emotional and sensory. It bypasses deliberate reasoning and attaches itself to feelings of trust and admiration. Overcoming it requires not only understanding, but also deliberate, consistent skepticism and the willingness to question even pleasant impressions. The most unsettling reality is that this bias can coexist with genuine qualities. Someone can be both charming and competent, or charming and harmful. The problem is not the presence of positive traits, but the automatic assumption that those traits extend into every other part of a person's character. When this assumption is left unchallenged, it becomes the perfect shield for manipulation. The influence of the halo effect is most profound and most personal within relationships. Whether romantic, familial, or professional, these bonds depend heavily on how we perceive one another's character. When perception is distorted by a single favorable trait, the entire dynamic of the relationship can shift in ways that are deeply impactful and sometimes harmful. This is where dark psychology begins to intersect with everyday life in ways many people never notice until damage has already been done. In romantic relationships, the halo effect often begins with attraction. Physical beauty or initial charm can create an impression of kindness, loyalty, or moral goodness that has not yet been proven. Many people enter relationships believing they have found someone exceptional based on only a handful of early encounters. Over time, the first impression shapes how every new piece of information is interpreted. Acts of neglect may be excused as stress. Harsh words may be forgiven as misunderstandings. The glow of the initial attraction blinds one partner to the reality of the other's flaws, sometimes leading to cycles of disappointment or abuse that are hard to escape. Power dynamics within relationships are also affected. A partner who projects confidence can easily become dominant in decision-making, as their opinions seem naturally more valid. The quieter partner may defer, not because they lack intelligence, but because the halo surrounding the confident one leads them to believe that confidence equals competence. This imbalance grows stronger over time, until one person controls not just choices, but the entire narrative of the relationship. The same mechanism plays out in families. Children often view parents through a halo that amplifies admiration, assuming that every action is justified simply because it comes from a figure of authority. While respect for parents is natural, this bias can prevent young people from recognizing harmful patterns, such as favoritism, neglect, or manipulation. Even as adults, many continue to view parents or older relatives through the lens of childhood impressions, struggling to reconcile memories of care with later realizations of imperfection. Workplace relationships are no different. An employee who impresses a manager early in their career may receive favorable treatment, promotions, or trust beyond what is objectively earned. Meanwhile, equally capable individuals may be overlooked simply because their first impression was less striking. This is not always deliberate favoritism. It is often unconscious, yet the result is the same. Opportunities and power accumulate around those who benefited from the bias early, while others remain in the shadows. Toxic loyalty is one of the most damaging outcomes of the halo effect within personal relationships. When someone becomes convinced that a partner, friend, or leader is inherently good because of one admired quality, they often ignore behavior that should raise concern. This misplaced loyalty can lead people to stay in harmful situations far longer than they should, defending the other person even when evidence of wrongdoing is clear. It is not uncommon for friends or family members to feel frustrated watching someone remain committed to a relationship that appears unhealthy from the outside. The truth is that the person inside the relationship is not simply choosing to ignore reality. Their perception of reality has been altered by the halo effect itself. This psychological distortion also creates emotional dependence. In abusive or manipulative relationships, early acts of kindness or affection form a powerful memory that victims return to during periods of conflict. The abuser's charm in the beginning becomes the lens through which later harm is rationalized. Victims often convince themselves that the kind version of the person is the true version, while the harmful behavior is temporary or uncharacteristic. This cycle is difficult to break because it feeds hope, and hope can keep someone tied to a relationship that continues to hurt them. Power structures in professional settings reflect similar dynamics. A charismatic leader or manager can gain unwavering support from employees who admire their presence or confidence, even when their decisions are questionable. This creates environments where unethical practices go unchallenged, as loyalty to the individual overshadows commitment to truth or fairness. Employees who notice problems may hesitate to speak out, fearing backlash from colleagues who remain under the leader's influence. In such environments, the halo effect does not just distort individual judgment, it shapes the culture of entire organizations. The impact extends to public figures and fandoms as well. Admirers may defend celebrities or influencers in the face of overwhelming evidence of misconduct, sometimes turning against critics rather than confronting uncomfortable truths. This loyalty is rooted in the same psychological pattern. The initial admiration, often based on limited information, becomes a shield that protects the admired figure from scrutiny. When admiration blinds judgment, harm can spread unchecked. Families protect abusive relatives. Employees stay silent about toxic leaders. followers defend dangerous influences. Each example reveals how the halo effect fuels unequal power dynamics, allowing those with influence to act without accountability. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward breaking it. But awareness alone does not dissolve the emotional pull that makes loyalty feel virtuous even when it causes harm. The halo effect is not merely a psychological curiosity. It confronts one of the oldest philosophical dilemmas of human history. Can we ever truly know another person's character, or are we forever trapped, judging shadows and reflections? This question has occupied thinkers from ancient Greece to modern existentialists, and it becomes even more urgent when we realize how easily admiration blinds us to truth. The bias does not simply distort how we see others, it challenges the very concept of moral understanding. Plato's allegory of the cave offers an early metaphor for this distortion. In the story, prisoners mistake shadows on the wall for reality because they have never seen the world outside the cave. In much the same way, the halo effect causes us to mistake outward signals for inner virtue. A kind smile, eloquent words, or physical beauty become shadows that we interpret as the whole person. What lies behind those impressions remains hidden, yet we behave as if the shadow is enough to judge moral worth. Aristotle approached the problem differently, arguing that character is revealed not through isolated impressions but through consistent actions over time. For Aristotle, virtue could not be faked indefinitely. Habits, choices, and responses to hardship eventually expose a person's moral core. This insight speaks directly to why the halo effect is so dangerous. It encourages us to draw sweeping conclusions from brief encounters. Rather than patient observation, we grant trust too soon, mistaking performance for essence. Modern philosophers and psychologists expanded on these ideas by exploring the tension between public image and private reality. Friedrich Nietzsche warned of the masks people wear to survive within social expectations. He suggested that most individuals live behind facades, performing roles that hide their true drives and desires. The halo effect reinforces this mask. Once someone achieves admiration for a single quality, the mask hardens. They are not only perceived as good by others, they may begin to believe in their own goodness, even when their actions contradict it. This internal deception is as troubling as external misjudgment, for it allows harmful behavior to flourish under the illusion of virtue. Religious and existential thinkers also grappled with this problem. Søren Kierkegaard described the human struggle between outward appearances and inner truth, urging individuals to confront themselves honestly rather than seeking refuge in public approval. The halo effect works against this honesty by rewarding surface qualities that earn praise rather than deeper qualities that require introspection. When admiration is easy to obtain, the temptation to live for appearances becomes irresistible. Psychology now confirms what these philosophers suspected. Human beings are drawn to simplicity, and moral complexity makes us uncomfortable. We prefer clear categories of good and bad, admirable and flawed. The halo effect satisfies this preference by allowing us to assign entire character profiles based on limited evidence. This simplification offers comfort, but it comes at the cost of truth. It blinds us to contradictions within people and within ourselves, leaving us vulnerable to manipulation and disillusionment. Modern psychology builds on these philosophical ideas, revealing just how fragile our sense of truth about others can be. Research into the halo effect consistently demonstrates that people are more likely to assume moral goodness when exposed to unrelated positive traits. A person who is attractive, articulate, or confident is often judged as kinder, more honest, and more capable, even without any supporting evidence. This finding echoes Plato's shadows and Nietzsche's masks, but it grounds those concepts in measurable cognitive bias. The result is unsettling. Morality, as we perceive it, is often more about perception than reality. This distortion creates profound consequences for personal and societal trust. If admiration can be manufactured through a single visible trait, then public faith in leaders, institutions, and even close relationships becomes precarious. We are drawn to those who seem admirable, not necessarily to those who are truly good. Charismatic figures in politics or business often leverage this psychological shortcut, knowing that one well-timed display of virtue will overshadow flaws or failures. This is how dark psychology operates in public life. It turns human longing for moral certainty into a tool for influence. Authenticity becomes especially difficult to detect in this context. Philosophers like Kierkegaard warn that authenticity requires confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves and others. Yet the halo effect works in the opposite direction, encouraging us to accept easy illusions. When someone aligns with our hopes or ideals, we stop questioning. Their charisma fills the gaps in our knowledge, and we project qualities that may not exist. This process is unconscious, which makes it powerful. Even those aware of the bias often fall into its trap, because it operates beneath deliberate thought. This bias does not only distort how we see others, it also shapes how we construct our own identities. When we are praised for one admired quality, we may come to believe that this quality defines our entire moral character. People admired for intelligence may ignore their own selfishness. Those praised for generosity may overlook their pride or hypocrisy. The halo not only hides flaws from others, but also from ourselves. In this way, the bias reinforces ego and resists self-examination, creating a cycle where illusions about character remain unchallenged. At a societal level, the cumulative effect is significant. Communities rally around admired figures, sometimes excusing harm to preserve the comfort of admiration. Institutions celebrate symbolic gestures while ignoring systemic flaws. Justice systems, workplaces, and even personal relationships operate under impressions rather than evidence. The cost of this distortion is not abstract. It is measured in misplaced trust, overlooked harm, and opportunities lost to those who do not fit the admired mold. The deeper we examine the halo effect, the more it challenges our assumptions about morality and truth. If what we see is always filtered through bias, can we ever claim to know someone's true character? Or are we doomed to live within carefully crafted illusions, mistaking them for reality? This question is not just philosophical, it is psychological, moral, and deeply personal. Recognizing the halo effect is not enough to eliminate it. Knowing that our minds are prone to this bias does not stop it from operating quietly in the background. The truth is that this cognitive distortion is automatic. It happens before conscious thought has a chance to intervene. The challenge then is not simply awareness, but learning how to disrupt the reflex that turns admiration for one quality into misplaced trust in every other area. Overcoming this tendency requires deliberate strategies and consistent practice, because the dark psychology behind it is deeply rooted in the way the human brain processes information. The first and most essential step is to slow down judgment. The halo effect thrives on speed. It operates in those first moments when you meet someone, see a profile picture, or watch a brief clip online. Within seconds, your mind begins filling gaps with assumptions. A person's smile becomes proof of kindness. Confidence becomes proof of competence. To counter this, you must intentionally delay conclusions. Instead of deciding quickly whether someone is good or bad, right or wrong, worthy or unworthy, train yourself to gather more evidence before forming opinions. By stretching the evaluation process from moments into days or weeks, you allow space for real patterns of behavior to emerge. Equally important is learning to separate traits when making decisions. Psychologists studying bias recommend evaluating qualities independently rather than as a package. For example, if you are considering hiring someone, do not allow their charisma in conversation to influence your assessment of their technical skills. Create structured ways to examine each quality on its own merit. Ask yourself if the admired trait is actually relevant to the decision you are making. Charm does not guarantee honesty. Attractiveness does not predict reliability. Questioning these automatic leaps is the foundation of more accurate judgment. Another practice is to intentionally seek disconfirming evidence. The halo effect naturally pushes us toward information that supports our first impression, while ignoring anything that contradicts it. This confirmation bias creates a self-reinforcing loop that is difficult to break. To counter it, deliberately look for signs that challenge your initial belief. If someone seems admirable, ask what behaviors might suggest otherwise. If someone seems untrustworthy, ask what actions might reveal goodness. This balanced perspective prevents admiration or disdain from hardening into blind loyalty or unfair condemnation. Self-awareness must also play a central role. The halo effect does not only distort how we view others, it shapes how we perceive ourselves. When we are praised for one admirable quality, we may begin to assume that this quality defines our entire character. A person admired for intelligence may ignore their lack of empathy. Someone praised for generosity may overlook selfish motives behind their actions. This self-deception can be as dangerous as misjudging others, because it allows flaws to remain hidden under the glow of external validation. Regular self-reflection, and even seeking honest feedback from trusted individuals, can help uncover blind spots that the halo effect creates in our own self-image. Building resistance to the halo effect requires not only awareness but the consistent use of psychological tools that interrupt automatic thinking. One of the most effective techniques is mindfulness. This practice trains the mind to notice subtle judgments as they arise, rather than accepting them as facts. By observing your thoughts without immediately acting on them, you create a gap between perception and decision. That gap is crucial. It allows you to ask whether your admiration or distrust is based on evidence or on a single exaggerated quality that triggered a biased response. Mindfulness is particularly useful in high-stakes situations where impressions can lead to lasting consequences, such as hiring, voting, or forming close relationships. Instead of reacting to first impressions, you learn to pause and consider multiple dimensions of a person's behavior over time. This does not mean distrusting everyone. It means resisting the temptation to assume that one visible virtue or flaw represents the entire person. Practical strategies can reinforce this habit. Structured decision-making frameworks, such as checklists or rating systems, help prevent unrelated qualities from influencing judgments. In workplaces, for example, managers can assess employees based on specific metrics rather than gut feelings shaped by charm or appearance. In personal life, this approach translates into deliberately asking deeper questions and observing how someone behaves across different circumstances, not just when they are presenting their best self. Another powerful method is exposure to contradictory examples. The halo effect thrives when you rely on stereotypes or simplified narratives about people. Actively engaging with individuals who defy these expectations helps retrain your mind. Meeting someone who is quiet but highly competent, or someone who is charismatic yet unreliable, challenges the brain's instinct to generalize from single traits. Over time, this exposure creates a more flexible and realistic understanding of human character. The halo effect also thrives on emotional intensity. When admiration is strong, questioning feels uncomfortable. This discomfort often pushes people toward loyalty rather than truth. To resist this pull, it is essential to learn emotional regulation techniques, such as deep breathing or reframing thoughts, which allow clearer thinking in moments of strong admiration or dislike. Regulating emotion does not eliminate empathy. It creates space for reason to guide judgment. At its core, breaking the halo effect is not about cynicism or suspicion. It is about replacing blind admiration with informed understanding. People are complex, containing both virtues and flaws. True respect comes not from assuming perfection, but from recognizing complexity and choosing to engage honestly. In a society where dark psychology manipulates appearances for influence and profit, this skill is more than personal growth. It is self-protection. The danger of the halo effect is not only that it leads to errors in judgment. Its true cost lies in how these errors accumulate silently, shaping personal relationships, communities, and even entire societies without being noticed. Blind admiration, once formed, grows stronger with time. It shields flaws from honest evaluation, excuses patterns of harmful behavior, and creates collective illusions when shared by large groups of people. This is where dark psychology becomes most powerful, not in isolated acts of manipulation, but in the quiet distortions that reshape how we see the world. The first cost is deeply personal. An admired quality, such as kindness or confidence, can overshadow every other trait a person may have. Over time, even clear signs of neglect or harm are minimized, because the initial glow of admiration continues to influence perception. This distortion is not born from weakness, but from human nature itself. The mind craves harmony. It resists challenging its own impressions, because doing so would force us to admit we might have been wrong about someone we trusted. The consequences grow larger when admiration extends to public figures. Throughout history, leaders have risen to influence on the strength of a single admired quality. A powerful speech, a compelling vision, or an image of decisiveness has been enough to earn trust across every area of their leadership. Once established, this admiration makes people slow to question, even in the face of clear evidence of wrongdoing. Entire nations have followed individuals into harm because the halo surrounding them made doubt feel like betrayal. Modern media magnifies this bias even further. Corporations shape reputations by showcasing charitable initiatives that distract from harmful practices hidden behind closed doors. Celebrities curate images that appear flawless, creating an illusion of intimacy and virtue that millions accept without question. Social media accelerates this process, rewarding moments that look good while punishing complexity or imperfection. In such an environment, perception becomes more influential than reality, and admiration becomes easier to manufacture than genuine trust. The greatest harm lies in what happens when these illusions collapse. When someone admired is revealed to be deeply flawed, the disillusionment cuts deeper than simple disappointment. It erodes trust, not only in that individual, but in our own ability to judge character. People often swing from blind admiration to complete cynicism, doubting even authentic goodness in others. This erosion of trust leaves lasting scars, making genuine connections harder to build and skepticism harder to overcome. Escaping this cycle begins with humility. It requires acknowledging how easily we are influenced by appearances and how often we confuse a single virtue for the whole of someone's character. Humility allows us to step back and see people as they truly are: complex, contradictory, and human. It is not about distrusting everyone, but about balancing admiration with awareness. By recognizing the halo effect in ourselves, we protect not only our judgment, but also the integrity of our relationships and communities. As you think about the people you admire most, ask yourself why that admiration exists. Is it grounded in consistent patterns you have observed over time, or in a single moment that left a strong impression? This reflection is not meant to strip life of inspiration, but to reveal truth beneath appearances. Seeing clearly, even when it is uncomfortable, is the first step toward authentic understanding. If this exploration has unsettled you, know that this discomfort is where growth begins. Every human mind is susceptible to the halo effect, yet every mind is also capable of questioning it. Share this understanding with those who might need it. Reflect on the ways it has influenced your own life, and prepare to look more deeply at the hidden psychological forces that shape perception and trust. There is always more to uncover, and the deeper we look into the shadows, the clearer reality becomes.